But anytime you discharge a firearm, there's so many different felony charges out there. Plus, everybody loves dogs. Plus, maybe self-defense isn't very clear. You see why this becomes so legally precarious. But
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we are talking about dog bite cases. What do you do if you have to defend yourself against a dog attack? When are you going to get charged criminally? When are you going to get sued civilly? And what's our number one piece of advice for making your life as easy as possible in the aftermath? But before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting the like button.
and dog bites, I will say, we kind of have these category of cases where we see what are gun owners going to find themselves in? Road rage, disputes with neighbors, bar fights. Dogs are way up there.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, it's kind of in the back of their mind, hey, self-defense, great. I'm trained on this. I'm proficient. I can stop threats. But the law, when it comes to defending yourself against an attacking dog, in most states is very different than what your typical self-defense laws look like.
Yes, it is staggering that I would say most states don't specifically contemplate having to shoot an attacking dog. And if they do, they're contemplating, well, perhaps you are exempted from animal cruelty laws. However, there's all sorts of other things you could be charged with. So you're going to have to look at your state's law to figure out where exactly you sit. But with only very few exceptions I can think of, there are almost zero states who really contemplate that this is a good use of self-defense, such that you're not going to have to go rely on a hodgepodge of like common law doctrines and ridiculous sort of defenses here, there, and everywhere, depending on what you might get charged with.
Because when we look at how criminal acts are punished, they say, hey, person, you've done something we don't like. It's because there's a ton of potential crimes that are implicated anytime you discharge your firearm. You could be discharging in city limits, discharging towards the habitation, towards a vehicle, across a roadway, putting a person in danger. I mean, there's so many different things out. These legislatures aren't sitting around going, oh, what happens if we inject an attacking dog into this scenario? And so they haven't thought about putting those defenses in there. And so it comes up short in a lot of places. Another thing that happens a lot, if you just look at a lot of states, just self-defense laws, they almost always contemplate that the use of force or deadly physical force is against another person who's acting unlawfully. They don't say dog, and if the legislature meant dog or, some other entity, they would say that, but they say person. And so, that's just kind of the backdrop to why this stuff is so precarious. But I think first things first, good self-defense principles still apply in a dog case.
Yes. Good self-defense principles still must apply, and you need to be able to articulate why you were acting reasonably and with immediate necessity. And that's where people, I think, get hung up, is that they focus more on like the reasonableness of, this is a dangerous dog. I know this to be a dangerous dog. My neighbor's never controlled this dog, and it's been a problem for years. I know this dog just killed somebody else's dog. This dog lunges at me through the fence every time I walk by.
It's killed all my chickens.
Right. So, yes, those are all good facts for you having to have shot that dog. However, those are all reasonableness of fear facts, not immediate necessity facts. And you got to have both. And that's where people get hung up, is they're like, well, I mean, I'll give you an example. My friend's dad, this was years ago, and I grew up with her, and he's great and she's great, but he had a neighbor's dog kill his dog. And then a couple weeks later, the neighbor's dog's out again. It runs onto his property and he shoots and he kills it. And he's like, yeah, that dog sucks. It killed my dog. It's obviously dangerous. And it was like, but that day wasn't.
Well, and that, I'll say that comes up a lot. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've got the question of, yeah, that exact scenario. I know this dog to be dangerous. Next time he comes on my land, can I shoot him? And the answer without additional facts, if that's all we know, the dog is physically present on your property after you know this dog is dangerous, yeah, that's not going to be enough.
No, you have to have that immediate necessity. So it was, and you can have it with or without prior knowledge of the dog, right? But on this particular day, this dog was 5 feet away from me, 5 feet away from my child. It was on its back haunches. It was like fur raised, teeth bared, ready to strike. I mean, do you have to wait to be bitten?
No, obviously not. And getting bit by a dog, I mean, nobody likes to hear that. Like, hey, you got to take a punch or you got to get bit. No, obviously not. You don't
You don't
need to
be
get
bitten.
mauled by a wild dog.
No, you don't. So, but you just need to be able to articulate that immediacy. And like, I remember, oh God, what was that GPD dog that was Chris's dog when we were first?
Is it
ABBA?
yeah, oh yeah.
ABBA. So their dog bites can be disgusting. And I remember having to look at like pictures of just hamburger meat from when ABBA would really get after people. So, you don't need to do that. But being able to articulate that immediacy, and you got to tell the police, because if you don't tell the police, it doesn't exist. You come back in, you talk about it later. Why didn't you tell it to the police? And the answer is probably, I didn't realize it was that important. You got to know it's important.
Well, and I'll say another, not to throw another monkey wrench into all this, but everybody loves dogs. And if you don't,
Yes.
then I'm just going to say, you're a bad person, right? Because everybody loves dogs.
Well, except for you know who.
I
Hate dogs.
couldn't believe that.
Believe that.
Yes, but a lot of people love dogs, and so anytime dog gets injured, guess what? Police inclined to think crime occurred. But anytime you discharge a firearm, there's so many different felony charges out there. Plus, everybody loves dogs. Plus, maybe self-defense isn't very clear. You see why this becomes so legally precarious, but good self-defense principles still apply. Reasonable, immediately necessary. Using the least amount of force necessary to stop the threat. Another good principle. If you can stop the dog by shouting, guess what? I'm going to encourage you to do that. Guess what? Some dogs don't listen. If you can stop the dog with a baton or a stick or something else, as opposed to discharging a firearm, the law wants you to do that. Not saying, obviously keep yourself safe, right? I'm not saying, don't discharge a firearm, but the law wants to encourage folks to use the least amount of force necessary to stop the threat. Now, when it comes to civil liability,
I was just going to talk about that.
well, that's the thing. The states are all over the place on this.
Yes. So, I think we can answer one question with certainty, which is, are you going to get sued if you shoot an attacking dog? And I would say it depends on where.
Sure.
I can tell you, if they believe there to be an insurance policy that will be invoked, yes.
Yeah, I would say, that's a big part of it.
Yes. Whereas, if you shoot an attacking dog and it's just like, you're not like on your own property or at a business you own, or they're not quite sure there's going to be some sort of insurance issue, you're probably off the hook. And, why is that?
Well, it's because really, these plaintiffs' lawyers, they're just looking for a payday, and I'll say that the amount of potential liability, and we got to talk about how defense impacts that, but the amount of potential liability, for the most part, it's pretty low. Most states are looking at the economic value of the dog.
Yeah.
Most states disallow like emotional distress and all these other things. They might include veterinary bills or something like that.
How are you going to prove how much you loved your puppy or not?
There's
right?
you got a whole Facebook timeline for that.
Fair enough. But it's not like, actually, my husband and I were joking this weekend. We were talking about boat accidents because my brother is, he sails, and we were all kind of sitting around together. And we were talking about how, when your boat hits another boat and you go, oh no, my lost earning potential, and like, oh, my loss of consortium.
Oh yeah.
Prove it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right. But like the dogs, right? There's no like puppy love scale in terms of monetary damages. So you really are just limited to like the cost of the dog and maybe what you came out of pocket for the vet.
And that's assuming, you're found liable, because here's kind of the second part to all of this. A lot of states, they offer protections to you if you're acting in justified defense. Mm-hmm. They're going to limit or eliminate your liability or potential damages. And so if you're acting in justified defense, theoretically, should you be paying out the owner of this attacking dog? they did a bad job keeping it in its enclosure. It's about to hurt you or other people. Should you be writing checks at the end of the day? No, that seems terrible.
No, that seems terrible. So, and it really is the process sometimes punishes you even when the law would not. Getting sued for shooting a dog is kind of one of those times where the process is a little punishing, but ultimately the law is not going to be terribly punishing.
Yeah. And this is one of those situations. Anytime you're discharging a firearm in a public place, it's going to come to the attention of law enforcement.
Yes.
This is one of those things where a lot of folks, they think, hey, I stopped crime or I stopped attack. no need to report to law enforcement. That's one of those things. Obviously, you want to speak to an attorney, but this is one of those things where most of the time you're going to be wanting to be the first person to report this to law enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, there are times when that's not. I mean, there are times people have called me and they're like, this is my, I've got 10 acres and I know who this dog is and it's been a problem before and it's killed my chickens and it's attacked my livestock and I've shot it and I've killed it. And there have been times where I'm like, well, you live on so much land. Did anyone hear you shoot it? No.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Do you own a shovel? I mean, there are times, right, where it's
Sure.
like, don't get law enforcement involved. Like that, just as far as your neighbor knows, the dog disappeared.
Yeah, but there are, I mean, especially if you're in an urban center,
Yes.
yeah, it's one of those things where would you rather the report come from you or hysterical dog
PETA
owner?
activists who oversaw it.
Yes. So, that's one of those things.
Yeah.
Obviously, speak to an attorney before interacting with law enforcement. You don't want to be doing that stuff alone. But I think this brings us to our number one recommendation, which is these people, you kind of know if you're going to find yourself in this scenario. And I want everybody to take a moment and what would you tell these people?
I would say you should carry your firearm, but you should also carry something else and that's true. We get calls from people all the time and they knew, right? They knew because like I take walks in my neighborhood and I know that there's been a dog problem, or I know my neighbor's dog has come killed my chickens, or I mean, there's almost always some kind of heads up. And so, yes, if you think you're in a situation where you're going to encounter a dog attack, two is one and one is none, right? Carry an alternate method.
Yeah, because every situation, maybe a firearm isn't the proper tool for that. And, when the only thing you carry is a firearm, you kind of box yourself in. That increases the chances of getting charged with a crime, potentially. So having the right tool for the job, I mean, these people, yeah, they're folks who go on a walk every single night and they've been attacked by a dog every month for the past 10 years. Guess what? You know what's going to happen. You need to maybe have some alternative to a firearm.
Right. Do you have a Byrna? Do you have a collapsible baton?
Chemical
right?
spray.
Yes, exactly right. So,
but it's a good refresher for folks. This happens a lot. Again, it's
all
in
the time.
our top 5 categories of self-defense situations people find themselves in. You want to train for the most likely scenarios. And guess what? Take a moment, reflect. Do you think you might find yourself in this situation? Maybe it's a good time to find an alternative defense tool, but we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And please, as always, question and comment for us here below. Until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.